Have you ever noticed your piercing sinking into your skin? Or you feel like your piercing is literally being cut by the jewelry you're wearing? If so, you may be dealing with something called the Cheesewire effect. This is an issue that can arrive in piercings that can lead to discomfort, irritation, or even the piercing fully rejecting. Today, we're going to cover what the Cheesewire effect is, why it happens, and most importantly, how to prevent this and what to do if this happens to you. That way, you can keep your piercings happy and healthy. Before we get started, I'm Ruby and welcome to Pierce Owl. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button because we post videos every single week about all things piercings. All right, let's get into it. So first we should talk about what the Cheesewire effect is. The Cheesewire effect occurs when jewelry, usually made of really thin material like 20 or a 22 gauge, or really heavy material, slowly cuts through the skin. Much like a cheese wire slicing through cheese. It happens very slowly, but can lead to really adverse consequences for your piercing. But there's a few reasons why this happens. This can happen due to excessive pressure, ill-fitting jewelry, or constant moving of the piercing. You'll often see this with nostril piercings, but it can also happen with lobe piercings. I mean, really, it can affect every piercing, but nostril and lobe is typically where you'll see it the most. Over time, the cutting effect can lead to a few different things. Number one is the thinning of the piercing hole. The tissue around the piercing is literally being sutured. This not only causes discomfort, but can affect the integrity of the piercing. Another effect can be scarring and irritation. The skin surrounding the piercing can become inflamed, leading to redness, soreness, and damage to the piercing. And finally, and this is like the worst case scenario, but your piercing can reject or migrate if the Cheesewire effect continues without any preventative measures. So if the jewelry continues to put pressure on the skin, the body may just push that piercing out completely. The jewelry can just slice through all of the tissue. So like my nose, that bar can literally just keep moving to the end of my nostril by just cutting through the skin. So not only is this painful and unnecessary, it can also lead to scarring. I also want to mention the Cheesewire effect isn't really something that happens within a few hours or overnight. Typically, you'll see it happen slowly over time between the weeks and days or months following changing your jewelry to something that doesn't fit, or immediately following a piercing that was fit with incorrect jewelry. So I just want to mention that it won't happen overnight, but it will happen over time. Okay, so now that we've discussed what the Cheesewire effect is, let's discuss what causes the Cheesewire effect. So there's a few different reasons why the Cheesewire effect happens. The most common is your jewelry being too small and thin. The larger the gauge, the more stable the piercing is. Thin gauge jewelry, think a 20 or 22 gauge, especially when combined with being too small, referring to the diameter, or too heavy for the piercing so that it pulls down, can put too much pressure on the piercing for the Cheesewire effect to occur. Besides thin jewelry or really heavy jewelry, there are a few other things that can contribute to the Cheesewire effect. That being frequent moving or snagging. Excessive movement to the piercing, such as twisting or playing with it, can cause constant friction, and that can worsen the issue. In addition, wearing the incorrect size can contribute to the Cheesewire effect. Like I said before, with thin or heavy jewelry, that can just kind of slice through the skin more easily, but wearing an incorrect size can also lead to the Cheesewire effect. For instance, if you're wearing a nose hoop that is too tight, it can lead to that ring kind of being pushed to the surface because it's too tight for your piercing. Okay, so now that we know what the Cheesewire effect is, what causes it, let's go over how to prevent it. Of course, no one wants the Cheesewire effect to occur. Piercings are expensive and it takes a lot of time to heal. If you have a piercing, typically you're pretty invested in it and are there for the long haul. You want it to stay happy and healthy. Not only is the Cheesewire effect painful, but it puts your piercing at risk of rejection, which no one wants. To prevent this from happening and to maintain the health of your piercing, here are a few tips. The number one thing you can do is to ensure the proper fit of your jewelry. When it comes to nostril piercings, typically piercers will pierce at a 18 or 16 gauge. But there may be some piercers who do a 20 or 22 gauge. That's not really recommended by most professional and certified piercers, but it still happens. If you're unsure of the best size for your piercing, visit a professional piercer who would be more than happy to size your piercing and let you know the jewelry that's best for you. If you were pierced with a smaller gauge, like a 20 or 22 gauge, you could visit a piercer who could size up your piercing from a 20 to an 18 gauge. It's really a small jump going from one to the other, and it can help keep your piercing more stable. However, go to a professional to get that done because it may be painful at home. Another thing that can prevent the Cheesewire effect is to avoid wearing really heavy or dangling jewelry for long periods of time. So I feel like it's like Aftercare 101, not to change your jewelry while your piercing is healing. But of course, there's people who will want to bend the rules and change their jewelry prematurely. However, if your piercing is fresh or healing, it's so important to avoid jewelry that pulls on the tissue excessively. Your piercing is especially vulnerable when it's new and healing. Also, in healed piercings, I think it's important to avoid wearing heavy or dangling jewelry for long periods of time, especially when it is a smaller gauge. A lot of hoops for standard pierced ears are typically an 18 or 20 gauge, and that's fine for short periods of time if you're wearing heavy jewelry that is a smaller gauge. But if this is something you're wearing for weeks and not taking out ever, can lead to the cheesewire effect, just kind of pulling on your lobes. It is something that happened to me. My ears were pierced at a 20 gauge. I don't even remember where it was. I think it was a hair salon when I was like 5 with the piercing guns. And I was a fashionista in elementary school, middle school, high school. I like to wear big dangly jewelry, and with my ears being pierced at such a small gauge, it really did lead to a lot of pulling and kind of left my ears having that more elongated look, like kind of looking more like a line like this versus a piercing hole. That is a form of the cheese wire effect. You'll see this on some women, typically like older women who wear heavy jewelry, and over years, like 40 plus years of wearing heavy thin jewelry, that piercing hole just stretching out. So I've since sized up my ears. I was at a 10 gauge. I don't really know where I am now because I don't often wear 10 gauge jewelry, but I've noticed that by wearing larger gauge jewelry, that cheese wire effect, that elongated look to my piercing holes is no longer there. My ears are back to looking more rounded and looking more like a piercing hole versus a piercing line. And again, that is from long-term wear of heavy dangling earrings. This wasn't something that happened overnight, but your experience may be different. I just want to say, like, for me, it took 10 plus years of wearing heavy jewelry to get that look, and sizing up really helped get my lobes back to looking more taut and like a piercing hole. Another tip for preventing the cheese wire effect is limiting excessive movement of the piercing. Be mindful of touching, pulling, or twisting on your piercing, especially if it is healing, to prevent unnecessary irritation that can kickstart the cheese wire effect. And again, I mentioned this before, monitoring your piercing, particularly if it's new, but honestly monitoring all of your piercings is a great way to notice if you see any signs of thinning skin or irritation. You could have a 5-year-old piercing and you never know. I've had 5-year-old piercings on my ears that act up. You never really know. Piercings are like that. So monitor all of your piercings. Finally, let's discuss what to do if you notice the cheese wire effect is actively happening on one of your piercings. There are a few steps you can take if you think that your piercing is experiencing the cheese wire effect, and it's best to act quickly to prevent further damage. Number one piece of advice is to consult a professional piercer. I know this is like kind of annoying to always be like, ask a professional, but honestly, I'm a DIY girl, but sometimes you have to resort to the professionals, especially when it's something like this that comes with a risk of rejection or migration. Honestly, leaving it to the professionals and seeking their advice is one of the best ways to go. A trusted and professional piercer will be able to assess your piercing and address the cause. They can tell you if your piercing is too small, too tight, whatever it is, they'll be able to figure it out for you and replace your jewelry with something that is a better fit for your piercing. So other things to do if you notice a cheese wire effect is to size up to a larger gauge. If your piercing allows, like mine did, sizing up to a larger gauge can help distribute the pressure more evenly. Even if your jewelry is heavy, but you're wearing like an 8 gauge, that weight is more evenly distributed through a larger gauge, so it's not going to suture the skin like a 20 gauge would. Another way to prevent the cheese wire effect from continuing is to size up to a larger diameter. Small or tight jewelry may be what is causing the piercing to be sutured. Sizing up to a hoop with more room can alleviate the pressure being put on the piercing. So honestly, I think that pretty much covers everything about the cheese wire effect. If you have any questions or you want to provide your experience on the cheese wire effect, feel free to leave them below and we'll try to get back to you. If you're looking for more content from us, you can find us at Pure Sowell on Instagram and TikTok. And we post videos nearly every single week. So like, subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so that you never ever miss a new video or an update from us. Thanks for watching our video and we'll see you next time. Bye.